I love using my garden to decorate the home for Christmas, and today I'm going to show you how to turn your front door into a warm and festive welcome. This is the doorway I'm going to transform. I'm going to put a large pot at either side and plant them up festively. And then the focal point right in the middle, a wreath on the door. There are several different bases you can use for a wreath. You can get these wire frames that you bind foliage into, or one that's ready-made as a base from bits of climbers and twiners. But I do like to use a moss base, not sphagnum moss from our moorlands, which needs preserving, but this is moss raked up from a lawn and bound together around a wire circle. It also holds on to moisture, and that's good. It just keeps the wreath fresher for that little bit longer. Now, there are various bits and bobs here that I'm going to use to attach to the wreath, but the majority of the foliage that's going there I'm going to cut from the garden. What I'm looking for are evergreens in the main and berries. And of course, one plant that is evergreen and berry bearing is the Christmas favourite, the holly. This is a glorious variegated one. It's my favourite. It's called Golden King. When you look at it, this glorious variegation, bright red berries, and I'm just going to snip off a few of these stems and take them back to make me wreath. Beautiful. I've got the holly, therefore I've got to have, haven't I, the ivy. The holly and the ivy, when they are both full grown, of all the trees that are in the wood, the holly bears the crown. But I reckon the ivy deserves a coronet, and in a wreath it's great because it will fill it out. The foliage here is evergreen, and the fruits are formed on ivy at this time of year, and if I take a few sprigs of this off, the foliage will help to mask that wreath base, and there's a lovely sort of architectural quality to the berries themselves. They turn black in time, they're just beginning to go now, and that's when they're tastiest for birds. But look, they're like little explosions, little fireworks, ivy berries, and they'll be a great complement to the holly in my wreath. And berries don't come brighter than these. This is Pyracantha, the fire thorn. Absolutely glorious. You can get berries that are either yellow, red, or in this case, orange. It is very thorny, so you might want to wear a pair of gloves unless you're roughy-tufty like me. And I'm just going to snip off some of these little stems here that are absolutely laden with berries. If you haven't got berry-bearing shrubs in your garden, don't despair. Any evergreens will do. Laurel, Leyland cypress, snipping bits off that. It's got a glorious fragrance. It's just a case of a bit of ingenuity, and you'll end up with something for nothing. I think I've got enough now with the holly and the firethorn to really make an impact. It's a kind of bounteous thing, and that's what they used to use wreaths for. They'd take evergreens out of the garden, showing that life was going on through the winter. It wasn't the end of all things back in the old primitive days. I'm working my way around, keeping the stem bases in one direction. I've got this very thin florist's wire, looping it round there, fastening it off, so it's now anchored to the wreath, and then I can just bind it round and round and round and round, and it'll keep the whole thing held together. A couple of turns on each one, make sure it's fairly secure, so that when it's hung up, it's not going to fall off. What I don't have in my garden is this glorious blue spruce, so I managed to buy a couple of branches of this. I'm snipping bits off, and it just gives a lovely almost frosted effect as I bind it on. I'm quite happily letting it stick out sideways to make the wreath a decent size. Ivy going in now, along with the holly and the spruce. There's no formula, it's just do what you think looks nice and a good mixture. When I used to work in a Parks Department nursery, we would occasionally make Christmas decorations out of holly and ivy and a bit of mistletoe in. I haven't got any mistletoe, but it's difficult to duck under a wreath for a kiss, isn't it, really? There's a greater sense of achievement about a Christmas wreath that's homemade, especially if you can get children involved. Don't worry about it being too tasteful. If they want to put something gaudy in there, let them do it. I'm trying to be generous here, so it's not too mean. It's really quite overstuffed. Generosity, that's the key. And also making sure that your berries are pretty much to the fore rather than covering them up. I think I'm almost there now. It's a reasonable size. I just need to add a few pine cones and cinnamon sticks. And then a bit of ribbon. Now, do I go bling or tasteful Scottish? I think I'm going to use the middle one. Now I'm just making a bow. This is always the fiddly bit. It's not too dominant. What it does do though is just fills the hole in the middle. If the bow's massive, it rivets all eyes. Here I think it's, well, slightly complementary to my arrangement. So that's my wreath for the door. Now I need to tackle the pots on either side. What I want to do is a pair of matching pots, one either side of the door, and giving them a festive flavour. Nothing is more festive than our old friend the holly. Unlike the variegated one, Golden King, that I cut for the wreath, this is a plain green form with very spiky leaves and lots of berries. This variety is called Alaska, and it's grown as a standard on a single stem. And that means it's the most wonderful statuesque centerpiece for a large pot like this. Now, there's a neat trick you can use here, because although I could tap this plant out of its pot and plant it properly in the pot, I might want to put it in the garden come spring. So I'm going to leave it in its pot in here and plunge it. So plant all the other things around it. But with this holly, to make sure I can just lift it straight out come spring and plant it in the garden, I'm leaving it in its container. It'll come to no harm at all. I'm going to need a bit more compost all around it. This is multi-purpose peat-free compost with added John Innes, and John Innes contains a bit of soil, and that means you get greater stability in a winter container when it's quite windy. And around it I'm going to put a bit more winter colour. It's a Christmas container, therefore it'd be churlish not to have a Christmas rose in it, wouldn't it? It's not a rose at all, of course, the Christmas rose. It's a hellebore, Helleborus niger, and it's beautiful. Look at all the buds that are about to open on here, loads of them. So it's going to be colourful for weeks on end. And the great thing about winter flowering plants, because the weather's colder, they don't go over nearly so quickly, they last much longer. I'm putting it in the front because I think it's quite impactful, because either side of it I want to put something really bright and cheery. Ta-da! These skimmias are sold in pots now. If you look at this, there are 3 plants in here. These are 3 rooted cuttings. They flower and berry when they're quite young, and you get a really good potful for your money. I'll tuck that in. Now remember, in winter you don't need to give them room to grow, to spread sideways, because they won't. So put them really cheek by jowl to give yourself the greatest spectacle from all these plants. So it's a really solid display. Now that's one skimmia on one side. This one is slightly different. This is Skimmia Reevesiana. See, the berries are that much more subtle, a little bit duller red. I just thought it's nice to have a slightly different one on either side. I always like a bit of a trailer in my pots, and variegated ivy, particularly at Christmas, is great. I'm going to pop that down here, one on either side, so they sort of frame these other plants. One down there and another on the other side. A bit more white, I think, from these white skimmias. This is O'Berry's white as opposed to O'Berry's red. I like a bit of brightness at Christmas, especially with light levels being low. You can afford to be that much more vibrant in your colour schemes than in the middle of the summer when light intensity is high. And now the final plant is green, and it's another skimmia, this time Japonica Finchy. And here is a plant that's in bud, green buds, and they do look gorgeous, don't they? So that will come out of its pot and go right in the back. And you can see now what I've done, because as well as playing around with colours, I've also contoured this pot, giving it a front and a back, and that means that it's lower at the front there, rising up at the back. You've now got a lovely slope which is showing you off. For maximum impact, I'm mirroring the look of the first pot by planting another, using exactly the same plants. And I've dropped in a couple of ferns just to complete the look. There we are. What was just really rather a handsome but not necessarily bright and sparkly and Christmassy potting shed door has become really rather inviting now, don't you think? I'm pleased with them. I'll be coming in and out of this potting shed every day, singing to myself, God rest ye merry gentlemen, let nothing you dismay, because I've got holly and ivy to cheer me every day. I just want to say thank you to everyone who's supported the channel this year, and to wish you the most wonderful Christmas. If you haven't yet subscribed, just click below. There's plenty more content to come over the next year.